Hi, and thanks for joining the Project and Action Planning recorded training. My name is Saya, and I'm looking forward to talking through these planning structures with you. The purpose of this training is to explain the importance of these planning structures and also to talk through the templates that you reviewed prior to this call. During Leadership Conference, you were introduced to strategic planning and have started to create your own strat plan since then. This session will introduce you to the two remaining planning structures that will allow you to bring your strat plans to life. The first structure is the project plan. You should consider your project plans as a way to capture every action you need to take to ensure your projects are carried out successfully. The second structure is the action plan. Action plans are made on a daily basis to keep track of the items from your project plan, as well as any one-off things that may come up during the day. At Institute, that is bound to happen, so it is very important to have an action planning structure that will work for you. We will talk more about action planning in a few minutes. Let's get back to the second step of planning, project planning. Since you've had a chance to review the project plan before this session, we'll begin by talking through its key components. The project plan template that you reviewed was in Excel, and you may choose to have a separate Excel file for each project, or you may choose to combine all of your projects into one spreadsheet with a lot of tabs. Ultimately, it's up to you. But the example we will look at today assumes that you have a separate file for each major project. Let's talk through each tab. The first tab is the Project Overview tab. Here you will list your goals, which you will have already mapped out in your strategic plan. You will also list work streams and key dates. Let's assume that we are talking about ceremonies as the project for this plan. You can see here that one of the work streams listed is venue. Other examples of work streams for this project could be diary speakers or staffing for the event. A key date listed here is the venue walkthrough that is scheduled for June 12th. The next tab on your project plan is the Actions tab, and this is really the meat of your plan, and the tab that will actually change most frequently. Let's talk through it briefly. As you can see here, we're still talking about ceremonies, and the workstream listed is the venue. A particular action tied to the venue is call university contact to schedule a walkthrough, and the driver listed here is the operations director. As we scroll over to the columns on the right, you'll see support, estimated time, start date, due date, week, status, and notes. Feel free to customize these columns as you see fit. For support, if your DIO is going to help you contact the university partner to schedule the meeting, you would list the DIO here. You can see filled in is a start date, May 12th, a month prior to when you'd like the scheduled walkthrough, and the due date, May 30th, giving you 2 weeks before the actual walkthrough. The Contacts tab is next. This is another optional tool where you can store all of the information about your stakeholders and partners. For the example that we're talking about, ceremonies, this is where you could list all of the university partners that are helping you with ceremonies. The next tab in this plan is the Notes tab. Some people find it helpful to have a Notes tab where they can jot down questions for their manager and things they learn along the way, or other bits of information. The last few tabs listed here include calendars for each month leading up to Institute. Some people find it helpful to use these tabs in order to see actions or key dates in a calendar format. Now that we've walked through the template, let's talk about the actual process for creating your plans. You will start with your goals from your strategic plan, Every action you take should somehow tie back to the overarching goals for your systems, which is why your first step will be to record those goals in the first tab. Please note that your DIO will provide you with guidance about whether you should create a plan for management and professional development. All other topics from your strategic plan should have a project plan. Next, you'll use your Institute calendar, which your DIO will provide you. Plans from previous years, which should be in your transition materials, and conversations with your DIO to determine what the major work streams for each project are and what your key dates and milestones are. Once you've taken these steps, your first tab is almost complete. There may be Institute-specific components that your DIO might want you to add to this first tab. In follow-up to this call, your DIO will provide you with that information as applicable. Let's move on to the next step. Your day-to-day actions should be focused on reaching the goals established in your key dates. You should be working backwards to make sure every action you need to take to hit those goals is captured. For example, when I was working on updating the Operations Director Vision of Excellence document this year, I started by setting the beginning of December as the target for having the 2013 final version posted for DIOs. From there, I had to work backwards to account for all of the steps in between that you can see on the slide. So as it turned out, in order to reach the December 8th target deadline, I had to start working on the draft on October 20th. As you can see, all of the items I just identified are actionable. It may be challenging at first to figure out where to start without knowing every single detail, but that's one of the reasons your project plans should be living documents. You will miss steps. This process makes you a lot less likely to miss a step because you're planning from the end goal, but it may still happen. You will have to make changes if someone misses a deadline, or if it turns out you need something completed 3 days earlier than you thought. You will also need to step back against all of your projects to make sure that you're prepared for times when the timing overlaps or when deadlines for 2 projects converge. Your DIO will help you do this as you complete your plans, but you should also be reviewing your plans on a weekly or daily basis to identify any steps you've missed and further clarify your actions. The last thing to talk about with project planning is how you will make sure each action on your plan is completed. You should use a system that works for you and your team, but one very good strategy is to use your project plans to build your weekly and daily action plans. At the end of the week, as you start planning for the upcoming week, open up all of your project plans and go through the upcoming due dates one by one. Make sure any actions have either been completed or on your action plan for the coming week to be completed at a specific time. Next, look at any upcoming start dates and make sure you are including time to work on any longer-term projects so the due dates don't creep up on you. Finally, make sure you are noting when you have completed a project and looking back at your goals to see if you are on track. One last thing to mention about project planning. A word of caution if you receive an exemplar plan from a previous operations director. Even if you do receive strong plans from last year, it will be important for you to customize the plans to reflect your goals and working style, as well as changes to the systems. As I mentioned earlier, your DIO will have a follow-up conversation with you about Institute-specific project plan expectations and customizations. Let's now move on to talk about the final piece of planning, action planning. You read 2 excerpts from the book Getting Things Done in preparation for this conversation. I'm sure you had a few takeaways from the reading, and perhaps some of these resonate with you. The big takeaway is that at Institute, the sheer number of things that need to get done in a small space of time can be overwhelming if you don't have systems in place from the start to capture them. So you can spend your time getting things done, not deciding what to do next, and so you can properly structure your OC's time. So it is important to note that an action plan is more than just a to-do list. It's the one place where you keep track of all the actions related to your multiple projects, where you note check-in topics and big ideas and one-off requests shouted to you from down the hall. Also, as discussed earlier in the project planning portion, your action plans should pull directly from your project plans. This way, you'll make sure all of the actions in your project plan actually get done. Let's go ahead and look at some sample action plans. Here's one example of a daily action plan. As you can see, the date and day are listed at the top of the plan. On the far left is a very detailed daily timeline where you can write in when you have check-ins with your DIOs, meetings with your university partners, team meetings with your operations coordinators, or even when you may be working in the copy center or resource room. The next column is for tasks. As you can see, high priority tasks can be listed at the top and then lower priority tasks below. Any items that you happen to pick up during the day that weren't initially planned for can be put in the new items to be added box. And on the far right are people boxes so that you can jot down any specific notes that you want to pass on to operations coordinators, your operations director team, or your DIO. The second action planning template that we have here is set up a little bit differently, but it still captures the same information. The timeline is still listed on the left side of the document, and the boxes for your tasks are just larger than the last template that we looked at. So you can see, again, high priority tasks and then lower priority, as well as new items that you hadn't necessarily planned for at the start of the day. As we scroll down, you'll see the people boxes that were also on the first page of the last document. So you have space to write down any notes for operations coordinators, and this gets even a little bit more specific with specific operations coordinator names, as well as for your DIO and your operations directors. Based on what you've read and what you've seen, and also what you've used in the past, hopefully the following must-have elements stand out to you. You will most likely want a paper-based action planning system for Institute, given that you will not be in front of your computer every second of the day. Ultimately, your system has to work for you. You can't force it, otherwise you won't do it. So please feel free to customize those action planning templates so that they can truly work for you and the systems that you set up for your team. Thanks for your participation in this session. You are now ready to start thinking about your project plans and will start to tackle action planning closer to Institute. Please take a couple of minutes now to jot down any questions or notes you will want to follow up with your DIO about during your next check-in or team call. Good luck planning.